Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, this is a kind of crazy one. Lucy Letby. She was the baby killer. I think she's gone down as one of our worst ever serial killers. But I remember doing videos at the time, and I did think, right, from what the evidence was, it's like it does seem like it's her. But I remember someone saying in the comments that she's innocent. Um, and yeah, now I think people are starting to actually think that. Quite a lot of people are starting to think that. And do you know what I mean? People think, right, and with social media, everyone's got an opinion, like me. But yeah. So it's like you take it or leave it, really. But once it's like Peter Hitchens, it's him, it's kind of like, because we've watched a couple of Peter Hitchens things, and yeah, he's very smart. Like, I haven't done a lot of him, but that's one thing that's very clear from how he talks, from what he says. You know what I mean? You can just tell he's very smart, and he's not afraid to say what he actually thinks. Like, that's two things you can take straight away from him. So, but once I found out he was on the bandwagon of Lucy Letby's innocent, like, it was an ex-cop that I heard it from. I was like, wow, Peter Hitchens thinks it. So I looked up to see what Peter Hitchens. Now, this ex-cop said that a lot of the evidence on her is circumstantiary, whatever it's called. Um, like her logging in and out of the hospital at certain times. That's what she was. She was a nurse and was killing babies in the hospital, apparently. But she has been convicted for it. Um, But yeah, even this cop said that he didn't really pay attention to it at the time. But a lot of the evidence they have got, like, is circumstantial. It's like her clocking in. She clocked in on days that babies died on the ward, and so she was there. And yeah, but not actual. I suppose not actual evidence as like something solid proof. But anyway, enough of my waffling. Let's actually see what Pete. Because yeah, like I say, once Peter Hitchens, I thought, well, yeah. Let's hear what Peter Hitchens has to say, because he's not a moron. So yeah, that definitely perked my interest into Lucy Letby's Innocent. So yeah, let's see what he said. This is an old one. This is from about 7 months ago, and I got another one after that's more recent. I think this must have been when he first kind of guess took an interest, because the second one is Lucy Letby's Innocent. So I think this one's where I think he's kind of just, I don't know. Let's see. Let's go.
Let's talk about Lucy Letby, because you've been a long-term shall we say, doubter of some of the things that happened in the Lucy Letby trial. We've just had another trial, and there's a big piece in the Telegraph today saying former cabinet ministers join mounting concern about how medical evidence was presented to the jury, and it seems to involve a lot of statistical analysis from the National
Oh,
Statistical Society.
there's an enormous amount of homework anybody needs to do if they want to get involved in this, because it is quite complicated.
Yeah.
And fortunately, there are growing numbers of actual experts getting involved in this. The bizarre thing about the Lucy Letby trial being that she had almost no experts giving evidence on her behalf for the defense. Her only expert witness was the hospital plumber, which still strikes me as rather odd. I don't know what the explanation for it is, but now there are experts getting involved rather on her side in the argument about what actually happened and what the evidence that was presented means. The fact remains that there was never any direct evidence of Miss Letby actually harming anybody. The whole thing is totally circumstantial, which, in a case such as this, where horrendous crimes are supposed to have been committed, and where the convicted person will die in prison, it seems to me you probably need more than this. I've been involved in miscarriage of justice cases before, and I've always made a resolve at the start to have it in mind that it's always possible that the person on whose behalf I'm campaigning may be guilty, because you have to keep an open mind in these things. But while keeping an open mind in this, everything I've examined, including the fantastically detailed and thoughtful piece in the New Yorker, which I really do hope will become generally available in this country soon.
Is that still not available then, generally speaking?
Oddly enough, you could buy it in the print edition if you were able to when it was out, and I obviously have a copy. And but as the last time I checked, which was last night, it still wasn't available on the internet. I
Right.
think there are small technical and legal problems yet to be resolved, but I do hope it is. When it is, it's almost a small book. It's 13,000 words,
Right.
but I do hugely recommend that people read it because it is fantastically useful. And then this week, two extremely careful and thoughtful articles, one in the Guardian, one in the Daily Telegraph, have taken up a similar direction. Now, I wrote last September that I had doubts about
Yes.
it, but then, of course, I and everybody else in Britain had to shut up because it became sub judice, and I couldn't say anything without committing a
And
serious
that was
contempt
because of the
court.
most recent case of the extra sort of charge of murder
Well,
from
yes, I must say I myself am puzzled as to what the point of that case was,
Yes.
but because you can't sentence her to stay in jail after she's dead.
Right.
The sentence can't be made any greater, and I'm not sure what it established, but we'll leave that to one side. That case is now over, so we can, unless, I mean, I wouldn't entirely be surprised if there were not if there were not future cases, because I believe the police are still looking into the whole matter. But as long as there aren't, we can talk about it freely. And I think this is the moment at which anybody who's concerned should do so, because the Court of Appeal very quickly denied her the chance to appeal against the conviction.
Yeah.
In an extraordinary judgment. There's a very interesting article on the Daily Skeptic, Toby Young's website today, about how curious the appeal court's judgment is. But because they have made that judgment, it really now will be up to people to persuade the Criminal Cases Review Commission to take up the case and reopen it, because otherwise there's no obvious recourse. But I think the very large head of steam now building up in responsible media has made a big difference, because we no longer have the view that the only people who object to this verdict are conspiracy theorists and nutcases and all the rest, because it simply isn't true. So I do actually hope, for the sake of justice, that the CCRC takes it up. And if at the end of that, of course, it's found that there is sufficient evidence for her to be convicted beyond reasonable doubt, then there we are. But at the moment, I don't think. You see, here's my problem. I believe in severe punishment for crime. But if you believe in that, you have to be really, really dedicated to ensuring that all convictions are safe as far as possible. You can't have people being severely punished for things they haven't done. So the tougher your criminal justice system is, the fiercer it has to be in making sure that there isn't any injustice in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I want, because what he said there, that's what I mean. It was such a big thing in the UK. It was such a big story, and everyone was that she's guilty. And like I say, I'm not saying whether she's, because like I say, even the stuff that they have got on her, it is suspicious. But one thing he said in there that like you couldn't kind of give a different, and like this is what I mean. This first video seems to be more him saying I've got doubts, but the next one is the one I'm going to put on after. Like, I'll put them together, the videos. But the next one, he's like she's innocent. But um, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was such a big story and such a big deal here that if they do let her out, they're going to have to put. They are going to have to find something real solid now to let her out, that the whole public accepts. Otherwise, she'll have to leave the country. 100%. She's probably the most famous woman, like I say, and she's the most notorious female, the most notorious person, full stop, in the last however long. And that if you let her out now, you've really got to have something that people believe. Otherwise, she's not going to be safe wherever she goes in this country. Which, in a way, if she hasn't done it, is even more of an injustice. But it's just how it is. It was such a big story, and But I do think there is actually kind of a wave of people that kind of are starting to go, like he said, like there's doubts on it. Even though the circumstantial evidence, I mean, it's pretty eyebrow raising what they did have. That's what I mean. It's enough that you go, it seems like it. Do you know what I mean? But like you said, you need to have something very concrete. But yeah, let's see what he says on the next one, because the next one he's saying she's innocent. So yeah. Yeah, let's see what this is a more recent one. This is one from a couple of months ago. So yeah, let's see what he's saying in this one. Let's go.
Lucy Letby now. She's going to be quizzed over more baby murders that presumably she's allegedly in the frame for, which brings into sharp focus what many people have been saying, many commentators, leading thought thinkers have been saying over the past few months that perhaps, just perhaps, Lucy Letby is the victim of a monstrous miscarriage of justice. Well, a warm welcome to the show to Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens. Welcome, Peter.
Pleasure to be with you, Cohen.
Thank you for joining me. Well, first of all, never mind the story today. Outline your reasons for at least doubting the veracity of the verdicts against him.
I think in the case of many of us who doubt the safety of the verdict, and that's as far as any of us can really go, it came with a particular moment during the trial or afterwards when we thought there was something slightly wrong or off about the way the trial was conducted. For me, there was a very brutal interrogation of Miss Letby while she was in the witness box by the prosecution barrister, which seemed to me to be excessive. And there was also the curious event when she was arrested for the first of 3 times. She was arrested 3 times before she was finally charged, when her garden was dug up in conditions of total publicity, an event I've still never seen her explained. There's no suggestion that she kept anything in her garden. It just gave people the impression that one was dealing with sort of Rose West figure. I felt that by the time the trial opened,
Yeah, do you know what? That's what Kev, because I'm going to do a series of miscarriages of justice. There's loads in the UK, but Kevin Lane's one, and he's like, when they was taking him to the courts, he's like literally they had like helicopters, armored vehicles following his thing. He's like, when you turn up with all of that stuff, it makes you look dangerous. Like, it makes you look bad in front of the jury if you're having to be taken in by an army. So yeah, I know what he's saying there. That's kind of a spectacle to make it like, to just make it look bad.
it was the whole idea that there should be presumption of innocence. It seems to have been forgotten in practice, though in theory it still existed. So there was that, and then I came after the verdicts to look into the actual charges and the way they were pursued. I'm still trying to obtain, as several people are, the transcript of the trial, and I haven't yet been successful. It's not as easy as you might think. But despite not having that, I have the very strong impression, and in fact I find when I contest this with the more intelligent of the pro-prosecution people, that there really wasn't any solid objective evidence against her. That it's all supposition, it's all circumstantial, and to send someone to prison for the rest of their lives on the basis of that seems to me to be extremely risky. And that's really it. I mean, there's much more. It was an immensely long trial. And as I say, when I get hold of the transcript, I'll be able to discuss in more detail the problems with it. There's also, it seems to be a growing feeling among those of us who are worried about the verdict that the jury wasn't, for various reasons, told a number of things which would have been important. And then there's the other extraordinary thing, and I'm not seeking to blame anybody for this because there's no point anyway, but the defense had actually on standby a very expert witness for their side, and he was never called. He's since given interviews, a very interesting interview in a recent book called Lucy Letby Unmasked by Jonathan Coffey and Judith Moritz, in which it's quite clear that he believes very strongly that she didn't have a fair trial. And he was there pretty much during the whole trial. Not every second, but for most of it, he was present. And I think his view has to be taken very seriously. So that's really why I think that there's a feeling here that this thing wants to be reopened, that more evidence should be heard, that some of the assertions made by the prosecution should be questioned, perhaps by more expert people than they were questioned by before. And let's see what happens. If she is indeed guilty, then that would emerge, it would seem to me, in such a reopening. And so the people who believe that she's guilty have nothing to fear at all from the reopening of the case if they're right. And if they're wrong, then surely they don't want her to be locked up for the rest of her life for nothing any more than I do.
One other extraordinary aspect of this case was that she spent 23 months in jail before even coming to trial, which is a very long time for incarceration on remand. But is there a suggestion also, Peter, that her conviction for these awful deaths was a convenient way to cover up for deficiencies at this hospital?
Again, I'm really not trying to attribute blame to anybody. Miscarriages of justice happen for many reasons. They happen because the crime which is being discussed is so horrifying that people become, in some cases, too angry to consider carefully what it is that they're hearing. They happen because a groupthink develops, and therefore no one really listens to the other side. But I'm not really interested in recrimination and trying to find out who's to blame for this. I think that would slow the process down in any case. My whole purpose...
I think another one that you can throw into that list is that the authorities need a conviction. They need someone, because the public is so interested in it. They need to find someone as quick as possible. But yeah, the other two, he's right too. The group mentality and people being so angry, so emotional at the details of the crime that it clouds your judgment on what the actual facts are. Yeah, very true.
Is to try and get the thing reopened so that it's properly examined in the way which I do not think it was in the first trial, or indeed the second retrial on a charge of attempted murder, on which she was also convicted. I think that we just need to have the thing examined again more coolly, more objectively, more carefully, and we also, I think, need to have a different atmosphere surrounding the trial from the one that surrounded that one. And I think we need to have expert witnesses testifying on her behalf. But I really am not interested in attributing blame or trying to find reasons why it happened. Things go wrong in the justice system because the stakes are often very high and people get very passionate. And I don't blame them for that. I'm not attacking the jury. I think the jury, as is often the case in miscarriages of justice, were not as well informed as they should have been. And that didn't help. And I think that they grasped at some things they were shown because an awful lot of the evidence that they were being given was incredibly technical and hard to follow. So there are many...
And that's the thing. There are a lot. There's some, like I say, I want to do a series of miscarriages because there's some people, Luke Mitchell, the Marilyn Manson obsessed killer in Scotland, Warren Slaney and the hot dog murders, Kevin Lane. Although Kevin's got out of that, he's still on a life license and he's recalled at the moment. But yeah, I don't think he did it. Or not, I don't think he did it. Just like he said, there's doubt. And it is what he said earlier too is so true about it. With Lucy Letby, it wasn't an assumption of innocence. It was presumption of guilt. That she did it. Everyone just assumed she did it. Yeah, so that's true. And it is innocent till proven guilty to beyond a reasonable doubt. If there's reasonable doubt, then you can't convict. But like I say, it was such a big story that that there's no way the jury couldn't have been influenced just by society, just by the media, and it was such a big story. So yeah, maybe it would be fair to kind of open it up again now that cooler heads and all that, cooler heads, yeah, prevail. But like he said, if if she's guilty, then another sentence is another court. Yeah, reopening the case is only gonna sentence her again.
Many reasons why this happened, but I don't. So I'm not trying to find or attribute blame for it. I just want there is this. If this young woman sitting in a prison till she dies is there on the basis of miscarriage of justice and ought not to be there, then all civilized people, whatever they think, okay, should be working very, very hard to make sure that that she is freed. If she was justly convicted, then we need to have much better evidence for her wrongdoing than was presented at either of the trials at which she was convicted.
Just to put everyone in the picture, she's 34, former neonatal nurse, serving a rare whole life sentence for murdering 7 babies and trying to kill 7 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital over a 13-month killing spree. I think in the frame of this conversation, the alleged killing spree. Why was it, Peter, do you think, that the expert witnesses, given that in a case like this, when there is no real definitive physical evidence, expert testimony is vital, it's crucial. Why was some of her expert testimony not allowed into court?
We don't know, and until the defence explain it, we never will know, and I suspect they never will. My own suspicion is that I don't think the defence really knew what they were up against. They were handling it in a very. There's nothing wrong with the competence of the chief defence barrister, and he's a distinguished man. But he was up against something quite unusual. I wrote an article for Spectator magazine some months ago now, in which I explained that there was a sort of street theatre going on around this case for many, many months beforehand. And it took place in very, very odd conditions. Not merely the 23-month wait between final arrest and the actual beginnings of the trial, but also a whole atmosphere of I think I say of her being surrounded by a fairly strong view that she was de facto being presumed guilty. As I say, this business of digging up a garden, and that was. There were also very other odd things about the case which people should consider. Now, I can completely understand why the parents of the babies involved, the ones who were allegedly murdered or harmed, sought and achieved anonymity. Nobody wants to intrude into their private grief. But what is quite extraordinary in this trial is I believe 9 prosecution witnesses were given anonymity, which is so extraordinary that it makes the jaw drop open. And they were given anonymity for reasons I can't quite fathom. And I don't think outside a treason trial or a major spy trial this has ever been done before, and it really does give the impression of a very highly dramatic occasion rather than a cool and forensic examination of the case against her. That worries me.
And I think there were briefings by the Crown Prosecution Service to their various reporters, which you've written could well have kind of flavoured their approach to the case as they reported on it.
Well, look at it like this: if you probably in your early career covered trials, most of us did, and you went along and you did as good at shorthand notes as you could, and you stayed as alert as you could, and when you transcribed what you'd noted, you tried to be as fair and as accurate and indeed as quick and contemporaneous as possible, because those were the rules under which we reported trials. Had to be fair, accurate, and contemporaneous, and if you did that, you were privileged against defamation laws or anything you did, and that's all you needed to do. I can't see why anyone would need to be briefed about a criminal trial in which enormous amounts of information are given to you in conditions of extraordinary privilege, things you couldn't normally say about people because they're said in court. And there you have it. I couldn't see what a briefing was for in that case, and I'm still puzzled. What I do know is this, and I'll be a bit general here. I spent an awful lot of time as a journalist, as a specialist journalist, as a defence correspondent for a short while and a diplomatic correspondent, as an industrial and labour correspondent, and working in the parliamentary lobby. And it always seemed to me, looking back on it especially, that those organizations, from the government to the trade unions that wanted to brief us and embrace us and make friends with us, wanted to exact a price for that. That in return for the familiarity and the accessibility they were offering, you were, how shall I put it, obligated to them.
Yeah.
And I think that is always the case in journalism, that if the moment you start accepting these things. Now, I'm not criticizing the journalists involved in this case. Had I been offered a briefing, had I been them, I would have gone. I think that's perfectly reasonable, and actually I don't criticize any of the reporters in this. I disagree with several of them about their conclusions about what happened, but they were doing their job, and that was okay. What I do feel is that there's something. I was shocked. It's actually mentioned in a short paragraph in Judith Moritz and Jonathan Coffey's book. I was shocked when I read this, and I asked a number of other journalists I know who've been around for a long time, and they too were shocked at the idea there'd been a briefing before a trial. The other thing is, the briefing was given by 3 senior officers of Cheshire Police and 2 very senior prosecutors of the Crown Prosecution Service in the northwest of England. Now, if it was a briefing, why didn't they invite the defence?
Yes, that's interesting.
So a question I've asked for a transcript or a recording of the briefing, and I was told that there's none available. Again, I would have thought you would record such a thing if you did it.
Interesting. One last quick question, Peter. What do you make of the fact, all over the front page of the Mail today, that she's being quizzed over more baby murder?
That is actually like well illegal, isn't it? So what he's saying is that there was a briefing for the prosecution without the defence's knowledge. But how can you? I didn't think like that.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a powerful scoop by Liz Hull, the Daily Mail's Northern reporter, and it's a very interesting story. I have to ask, and I still think it's an extremely interesting question, what is the purpose of further prosecutions for Lucy Letby? She's already in prison until she dies. What are they going to do? Make her stay in prison after she's dead?
Yes,
I don't. What is and you have to ask what will this do? And I'll tell you, I don't know why they're doing it because they haven't told me and they haven't said. But one would ask, is it possible that somebody might have thought that putting her on trial again would mean that for the many months of that trial, indeed as soon as charges had been preferred, if I remember the law correctly, none of us would be able to say anything about it. Not just about that case, but anything we said about the case at all would break the sub judice rule and make us subject to contempt of court proceedings and quite serious penalties. So it would silence what has become actually a very active debate, quite dangerous, it seems to me, to the prosecution. So whether that's the intended effect or not, I have no idea. But it would seem to me to be undoubtedly an effect which will happen when and if these charges emerge and are prosecuted. So one has to wonder whether anyone has that in mind, but doubtless they wouldn't do anything so, how shall I put it, cynical.
Peter, listen, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, see, this was quite interesting because this wasn't someone. I thought he was going to go into the actual evidence against her, but it wasn't. It was more how the case was handled and the extraordinary circumstances that seemed to be around it. But yeah, like I say, I want to do a miscarriages of, because there's so many in this country that have actually been accepted. Well, in this island, I guess. Joe Steele in Scotland. The Essex Boys murders. John Holmes and Mickey Steele went to prison for their whole life for that. They've only just been released. But yeah, I don't think anybody thinks they did it. And I'm sure they was actually told, if you admit to doing it, same as Luke Mitchell, the Scottish boy, they've said the same thing to him. If you admit to doing it, we'll basically, yeah. because they served over their sentence just because, and that's the thing. The system really doesn't want to admit it's wrong. So even if they do reopen the trial again, they are going to be up against it because they really don't like to admit that they're wrong. Like I say, they haven't admitted it with Kevin Lane. He's still getting recalled and shit. Luke Mitchell got denied his appeal. He had an appeal. I saw that come up. I think it was on the Sun that he had an appeal, and again, it's a similar thing with him. Like he said as well with the digging the body up. Bit like this. There's actually quite a lot of similarity in Lucy Letby and Luke Mitchell. Luke Mitchell was painted in the media such a way that you think, how could he not? Saying he's a Satanist and a Marilyn Manson fanatic, and the Marilyn Manson murders that happened in America. Someone who killed people and said they did it because of Marilyn Manson. They said Luke Mitchell was recreating their murders because he's a massive Marilyn Manson fan, but he wasn't a Marilyn Manson. But they painted him out to be this evil satanic, but he actually wasn't. And yeah, he's been in prison since he was like 15. I think he's got to be nearly 40 now. Whole life in prison for something he didn't do, supposedly. So yeah, I want to do something on that. I want to do something on Warren Slaney. Warren Slaney, another person in prison for a crime that I don't think anybody thinks he committed. Like, he didn't fit the description. I don't even know what. I think there was one inconsistency in his. Anyway, I'm going to do something on Warren Slaney, but I think also with Warren Slaney is I've heard about him through Yami and like different ex-prisoners telling stories, and everyone's got a Warren Slaney. Like, that's another reason I think he ain't been let out, is because I don't think he's ever admitted to it again. But also he's a right handful, like a right handful. Like, even though he went to prison for something he didn't do, he's like, yeah. Let's just say he kind of handled it with ease. But yeah, because he's always been in trouble in prison, I think that's another reason they won't let him out. But it's like, if he's in prison for something he wouldn't do, and I've seen ex-prison guards say the most the the prisoners that are the hardest to control are the ones that are innocent, which you think you would be. You'd want to kick off every now and then if you're in prison for something you didn't do, and you've got someone telling you what to do and to go here and get in there and lock up, and for something you didn't do, you're gonna kick off. So yeah, a lot of ex-prison guards say that, or prison officers, they like to be called over here. But yeah, they say that the normally the ones that are the ones kicking off all the time is the innocent people. I think that's the same with Kev Lane as well. Same with Warren Slaney, is that they're both a couple of handfuls. Like, although they might have been wrongly convicted, like I say, they're quite capable, but of coping in prison. But yeah, this was quite interesting because it was a different angle than what I was thinking. I was thinking, like I say, he was gonna kind of dissect the evidence against her, but it wasn't. It was the kind of mishandling of the case. And yeah, he's got a good point. If you believe she did it and the evidence is there that she didn't, and why would you be bothered? Like, I don't know why anybody would be against, which I'm guessing what it is people are against her getting a retrial. But ultimately, if she did it, like I say, and I'm not saying that she didn't, because the evidence is suspicious as hell. Like, it is weird that it always seems to be when she's on a shift, and her internet history showed that she was looking up the victims' kids when they on Christmas, like, yeah, like but again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not hard proof. It's not like, yeah, it's not video evidence. It's not like, But if you think that that will get her resentenced, then why would it matter if you reopen the case? And yeah, and like he said, like he went into different actual court proceedings that was broken, I guess, and things that are unusual in the court proceedings. But it was going to be handled unusually anyway, like I say, because of how big the story was. There's no way you can possibly get a fair trial, really, if when the story's that big. There's no way you can get 12 people that aren't going to be swayed in one way or another. And that you can't 100% trust their thing, because if the whole world, if the whole country thinks the person did it, you don't want to be the jury member that goes against the whole country. Not a lot of people want to be that person. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I mean, if she did it, yeah, she can rot in hell. But yeah, like you said, if there's a slight chance she's innocent, it has to be beyond reasonable doubt. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. What do you think? But yeah, like I say, like he's right. If you think she's guilty, then she's gonna get sentenced again, and she probably will anyway, because she's, like I say, she's gonna have the system against her, just like Luke Mitchell has. I don't think Luke Mitchell did that, but then I've only seen once anyway. That's a whole different video. But I'm gonna do a kind of carry on a miscarriages of justice, because there's a lot. Both ones that are where the people are still serving the sentence, and ones that have been proven to be miscarriages of justice. But yeah, like I say, let me know your thoughts. Sweet.